Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of One Mic Night, the podcast that brings you stories of artists and people on their journey, helping to guide, answer questions, and motivate you in life and the business. You already know who I am. It's Marcos. I'm back again, and I want to thank you guys all for joining me on this journey. I say it every week, but I couldn't do without you. And thank you for the support. We're coming up on 17 years of OneMicNite next month. And all the people that have come through OneMicNite in the live series and on the podcast, I want to thank you guys for being along with me on this journey. So today, I'm excited. My guest is a guitarist. He is definitely a musician. He is a composer. And I have the honor of having him here. His name is Eddy Zak. So please welcome him to the show. Eddy, welcome to OneMicNite.
Marcos, I can't thank you enough for having me. Thank you. This is
my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time.
Pleasure, man.
Listen, I have questions. The first question is, who is Eddy Zak?
Man, you're getting deep. That's
right.
Wow. I was born and raised in Jersey City, and my dad was a Vietnam veteran and a guitar player. He actually got into the guitar while in Vietnam. A friend of his played him Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze for the first time, and he lost his mind.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a big one to play in.
Ooh. When my dad would describe it, I would love, because he would mimic the sound of Jimmy's guitar with his voice. He would, go, and he would imitate the feedback and all that, and that just, from that point forward, he was completely into the guitar. Yeah. And I went to school, I went to high school, grammar school there, and especially during that time, guitar in particular was really in its heyday. And I'm 52, so we're talking about by the time I got my first guitar at 5, and one of the things that's interesting about my dad's relationship with Jimi Hendrix's music is that he got me my first electric guitar when I was 5, and he put it in my hands right-handed, because everybody played right-handed, but I immediately flipped it over lefty. And at that time, like, there weren't many lefty guitar players, and of course Jimmy being the most famous of them all. And a lot of people, because there weren't as many left-handed instruments and all that, a lot of people were trying to force left-handed players to play righty. But because of my dad's, love of Jimmy, he understood that, okay, so we strung the guitar upside down and all that stuff. And there became my beginnings, and just jamming with my dad and listening to him, and the music that he was listening to. And our household was full of jam sessions, people coming over and just jamming and soloing back and forth. And this,
I love that. So the music was in the blood. Music was definitely in the blood.
Definitely, yeah.
Did he enroll you into some sort of music school, or was he teaching you along the way, or you just picked it up, or what? How did that come about?
Eventually, he tried to get me into, like, I think I was in 2nd grade, and they would, at the time, they're teaching you how to sight read, like Mary Had a Little Lamb and stuff. But I didn't enjoy that, because it was too much like school to me, and it's too regimented. So, and I preferred our jam sessions where we would just take a simple chord progression or a riff, and one of us would play rhythm guitar while the other one soloed, and then we'd go back and forth. So my first relationship with the craft was really about improvisation, and before I even knew how to play a song, I could play little leads and stuff. Because that's what my dad did. He wasn't really into songs so much. Right. But he can improvise and and make up his own stuff.
I love this, because that's kind of the basis of what jazz is. It's improv. It's listening and staying within the keys, the range, and improvising like solo and listening to the other people playing. And listen, man, I got to tell you, and I don't want this to be about me, but I did last week. I hosted the Harlem International Film Festival, and there was a documentary about Ron Carter.
Wow.
So I got a chance to interview Ron Carter.
Wow.
And the information that he gave was, I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
And he was talking about improvisation, and in the documentary, you see the improvisation that he had with some of the people. He had John Baptiste on there, and they were doing a little interview on the documentary, and then they played something together, and the way that it was intertwined, just in an improvisation.
Right.
You have to know the improvisation. That's what makes you so killer.
For me, and I try to convey this to, and my students as well, is to me, that's the most cherished element of what we do, the creative side of it, your relationship with the crafts, where you can speak your thing, you can do what, you can make your own sound, your own style. And all the masters, and certainly Ron would be one of the great living masters, they had that, you can hear one note of them and it's them. Miles the minute you hear
exactly.
Train as soon as you hear Train, and the list goes on, and so many incredible musicians. Yeah, I love that. That's, to me, the most cherished element. Now, I'm also into classical music, so I also get the, if you're a violinist or whatever, the interpretation of the page has its own creative thing. Even though you're adhering to the notes and rhythms that the composer has written, there's dynamic elements, there's vibrato, there's staccato, legato, loudness and softness of things, all these little nuances. That's also creative. But for me, certainly for the way that I was raised, and I'm so grateful for this, it was always about that improv, always about making your sound.
Right. I love that. And you touched on something earlier too, probably when you were growing up. At that time period, rock music was pop music. Everybody, like Def Leppard, heavy metal, all that stuff. And I'm a man of a certain age too, so I listen to that stuff too. So I know what you're talking about.
Every song on the radio, even like for the pop, like Whitney Houston's "So Emotional" has a guitar solo.
Yes.
Janet Jackson,
yeah.
And then forget it, you get into Prince. I mean,
just stands alone by himself. Like you can't even,
bananas. So yeah, that era was a really powerful time for guitar players in general, because it was such an integral part of pop music. Definitely.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's sort of gone, or is it still there?
It's still there. It's interesting because I used, I guess the more skeptical, jaded side of me, of course, I've seen the changes, as we all have, as pop culture is evolving. The internet has definitely opened up the fact that, it's still there. Like there's still bands like Paramore, and Polyphia is a great band as well. And a bunch of others that I may, whose names may escape me or what have you, who, where the guitar and that element of virtuosity is still prevalent in the music. And it may not be on the radio, so to speak. I don't know how relevant radio is anymore. To be honest.
I don't either.
Right.
But yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, so it still exists, it's especially, the internet has allowed that. And, so yeah, I'm blown away, even by the music that's not guitar, driven. There's just so much great stuff out there, man. It's really incredible.
Right.
There's so much great music now.
And I have to say, that's probably one of the good things about the internet, is that you can, research that stuff and look it up and just be like, yeah, man, that,
exactly,
and just find all that kind of
I'm hearing in particular with the guitar, for example, although it's happening on all instruments, right? I mean, you're hearing people from all over the world, from all age groups. Women are certainly way more involved. I had so many female guitar students through the years, more than male. Great players from everywhere. Like I said, every age group, that are just playing on all instruments, that are just playing remarkable stuff. It's really inspiring.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Do you have a particular genre that you like to play in? Is rock your sort of your
Rock has been,
go-to?
yeah, rock has been the genre that I had, that I grew up in, that I've had the most experience in, but especially in the last, I would say, I guess since the mid 90s where I started, playing more cover music to make a living,
Hmm.
and especially with Raj and the guys from the Groove and the Village Underground and the scene in New York, where I got to play hip hop, I got to play R&B, and and of course, my love of composition, of classical music, of course, jazz. I love playing jazz. I'm not the best jazz player, but I still try to play giant steps every day to try to
Oh,
play
wow.
them
Wow.
over. It's a very difficult piece of music to play, to improvise over. But yeah, I just love it all, man. I even have projects where I have to, play country music. I just love music.
Yeah.
If it moves me, that's all that matters.
And that's what I like about it. That's what makes it universal is, music moves people.
Right.
And, even me growing up, I was a musician too. I mean, I didn't follow it. It wasn't my passion. It actually came naturally. Yeah. I started out as a flautist. I played the flute first. Then I mastered that. Like I can still pick that up today. That was 30 years ago. I can pick that up today and just be like, read the music, go. But then I was so good at it, then I started playing the clarinet. Then I got a jazz teacher. He was like, yo, man, he talked like, yo, man, you cool cat. You cool cat. I need you on the saxophone. He threw me on alto sax. Then he threw me on, tenor sax. Next thing you know, I was playing the bass. But it wasn't my passion. Yeah, yeah. At first, I started the upright bass.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, music is universal. Yeah.
It must have been a trip for you to interview Ron Carter as an upright bassist.
Oh my God. Yeah. And yeah, his information was, incredible. There were also some kids in the documentary who were at the actual talkback at the film festival. Nobody was in the audience. They weren't asking questions, and so I reached out to the kid. I said, listen, this is your chance to ask Ron anything you want to. So they asked him a question and he gave him like a 5-minute master class on jazz, on
Nice.
jazz music and music.
I heard Bobby
So
McFerrin once give an incredible definition of the difference between jazz and classical music. I thought it was really powerful. He was talking pretty much about the rhythmic aspect, the swing,
mhm.
right? That as opposed to bum 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 or whatever the
Yeah.
you know and he simplified it in a way, and I think that's amongst a lot of things that's pretty accurate. That's that rhythmic component, and of course the improvisational element
Yeah.
of that. It's incredible. It's such a rich music. Incredible.
Rich music. What was you mentioned the New York scene. What was the New York scene like for you? Because there
Amazing.
were some cool places in the 90s
No question. I
and
started playing.
2000s.
Yeah, man. I started playing at the Bitter End in 1990. I was 19. That's how I met Kyle Christian.
Okay.
Connected us, man.
And for those of you who don't know, Kyle Christian's just season 1, episode 20. Go back. He's on there. Tells his whole story.
Sweetheart, great guy,
Yep.
man. And yes, I had a trio, and we were pretty much playing what I guess would be considered fusion. The combo, the hybrid of rock and jazz, and it was instrumental music, which was a anomaly in that club because they really didn't do instrumental music.
Hmm.
But it was a dream for me to be able to play, in New York, and they kept me and my band on. And in fact, Kyle mentioned his name as well, a gentleman by the name of Gordon Gaines, who's just this amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My God, what an incredible guitar player. his set was mostly instrumental. I think he was one of the few instrumental bands there, and he was like the guy there. He had a consistent Monday night, and I remember he was also from Jersey City originally, so we connected, and he gave me his Monday nights, me and my band, for a few months because he wanted to take some time off, and that was a game changer for me because big difference, as you know, going from your practice space or your rehearsal space to the stage in front of an actual audience.
Definitely. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All those things that factor in the nerves, the fact that you're cognizant of a group of people listening to you and watching you, and then perhaps the distractions of the clinking of a bottle,
Right. And so how do you do it? Yeah. How do you do it? Because that is hard.
It is. It's definitely such a different thing from being isolated in your, bubble of practice and rehearsal to, now it's alive and all these other factors are coming into play. And so that was huge for me. And then, it just grew from there. And then, eventually I played in cover bands, wedding bands. I played, every conceivable, from cafes to restaurants to bar mitzvahs to weddings to corporate parties, the whole shebang. And then in the early 2000s, I was in a band that got a record deal. We got signed to Atlantic Records. And then we wound up recording an album, going on tour, which also, was a whole other experience. I always, wanted to tour. So that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Went around the country and did our thing, and then eventually I also that band kind of went its way, and I started playing with an artist named Toby Lightman, and that was awesome. We played David Letterman, Conan O'Brien. We got to open for Prince.
Oh wow, wow!
Bananas.
What was that like?
It's one hell of a story, man. I've only said it to some of my close friends. Basically, it was surreal. Basically, so Prince had seen Toby and her band on Conan O'Brien, and his people got in touch with her management and basically scheduled us to open for him in Portland. This was during the musicology tour, so I think it was 2004-ish, 5-ish, somewhere there. And the day we flew in to do the show, they had accidentally sent my amplifier and my pedals to Paris. So I was without my gear.
Oh man!
Prince caught wind of it, and he let me use his gear. I got to use his amp and his.
Shut up! Wow! Wow! That's dope,
Marcos. Let me tell you.
Wow!
Man. So we go in, and we're all nervous, of course, because it's Prince, and we have no idea what to expect. He's such a mystery, and I'm a huge fan of his music, man. So, pretty much since Purple Rain forward. And his tech comes up and sets up my gear, and then his other technicians are setting up the rest of the band, and he's out in the audience kind of with his bandmates walking around. He gave us his sound check, which is unheard of for a headliner to do. Usually the headliner is not going to give you that time to get your sound together. When you're the opener, you rarely get much time to get your sound together. You get a line check, all right, everything works, off. The headliner, sound checks, and they get all the details right for their thing. Not Prince. He gave us his sound check.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was really, really sweet. So we played our set and we did our thing, and then it was really cool. It was incredible to play. We played the Rose Garden at the time. I don't think it exists anymore, but it was Portland's version of Madison Square, basically. And
that's huge.
It was.
That's huge.
What
was going through your mind? Speaking of, switching from a studio space to on stage, that's a huge platform.
Yeah.
What was that feeling?
At that point, I was pretty seasoned. So was the band, and really you're just focused on, doing a good performance, playing, and of course trying to absorb and enjoy because it's so immense,
Right.
But it was incredible. Like you just embrace the moment. And then so we did our thing. He did his set, which was immaculate. I mean, his set was just, literally the entire band was crying at the end of his set.
Wow.
It was so beautiful and powerful, and just, you know, had all the wonderful things that, you know, music should have. It was also, you know, very light and, you know, fun, and, you know, just everything he represented. So after he does his set and we're all just blown away, someone from his camp came and invited us to hang out with him at an after party. So we're like, oh, okay. So, you know, we went back to our hotel and changed, and then, you know, met up at the spot. And there's no one there except like a bartender and maybe one other person, but the bar, it's empty, right? Marcos, I swear this is bananas. So eventually he and there's about 8 of us in the room, the band, and because it, you know, it was Prince, Toby's manager, and a few other people from behind the scenes also came to hang out. And so he shows up. I think he came with his personal assistant and maybe one bodyguard who stayed outside. And he walks in and he, you know, looks at, and we're all just like, we can't believe we're this close to him. You know?
Right.
This is crazy. And literally the first words out of his mouth were, "Which one of you is the guitar player?" So you know, I was actually pretty far away from him in terms of the distance between all of us. And you know, I walked up to him, I shook his hand, and I introduced myself. So he puts his arm around me, sits me down on this like L-shaped couch thing right next to him, and then tells everybody that they have to let me play more.
What? Wow.
Where do you? And
Wow.
I can't believe this is happening.
Wow.
And then he just, you know, starts talking about, you know, basically it was just like another, you know, a bunch of musicians, although he and I talked, I think mostly at that point, talking about music. We talked about, like he was telling Toby, for example, that she should let her musicians stretch more because the audience will appreciate that. Like, don't underestimate the audience. We talked about Miles Davis, the Kind of Blue record, for example, how it's still selling tens of thousands of copies a month, and the viability of that music. How he was in a great place financially because he was managing and controlling all the elements of his thing. I
Wow.
mean, that deep. He was dropping
Wow. Yeah.
knowledge. We talked about, I dropped it because I was a fan, still a fan of, he's got a horn arrangement on a song called Billy Jack Bitch off of the Gold Experience that it's always floored me. It's just, you know, very jazzy, and weaves in and out of the key signature. It's an incredible arrangement. And we talked about that. We talked about Claire Fisher's orchestrations on in his music. And yeah, it was just a total music geek fest, man. It was so down to earth and sweet, man.
And so, you know, when you are in the presence of greatness like that, how do you feel? How do you measure up? How do you feel? You know what I mean? Like a lot of people will crumble.
Sure. There were people in the camp, for example, I won't mention names, it would be embarrassing for this person, but Toby's producer, for example, at one point interjected in the conversation and was trying to drop names of people that he had worked with that I think Prince also had worked with. And Prince literally stopped him mid-sentence and said, "Who are you?"
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it was totally inappropriate.
It wasn't that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So some people, you know, are that way, but, you know, because he's such a musician, like, and if you just, and I feel this way about, you know, I've met a few and have worked with a few, you know, famous people or whatever. They're just people like the rest of us. And I think if you treat them, you know, from that angle, you know, of course with respect, but also just, you know, and certainly not any of that, you know, angling for, you know, and you know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Any of that stuff or name dropping or any of that. They're, you know, but I mean, you're certainly at the same time in awe and you know, and it's like, it literally felt like it was happening in slow motion, you know, like, whoa, I had to get, I got up at one point. I literally could, oh, that was the other thing he did at the time, because the technology was different then. He had DVD'd our performance, which we didn't know.
Wow.
So he actually played it in front of us because they had a big screen in the bar. And at one point, I took a guitar solo within one of the songs, and he made me stand up and take a bow. And at that point, I literally, and I can't believe I can say this, at that point, I sat down for one more second because I was literally right next to him. And I said, "You're killing me." I said, "I got to get up for a minute."
Wow.
Went to the bar
Wow.
and got a drink. But also, I wanted him to have, I wanted the other members of the band and stuff to have like more time with him in that
Right.
regard. So, he and I were kind of really chopping it up. And it was, I mean, I still can't believe it happened. I'm still shocked over it.
Interesting. Well, judging by, your humility right now, I can believe it happened. So yeah, just wow, man, take that in. Just take that in. Wow.
His love of music was the thing that stood out the most, like and his humility that's the other thing. When someone of that stature is that humble, it humbles everyone else around.
Right. As it should. Yeah, definitely. Looking back on like the moments of, aside from that one, just growing up in the New York scene, there was so much happening. Where are some of the places that sort of still stand out for you?
Certainly the Bitter End will, it's absolutely a landmark.
Mm-hmm.
Because I pretty much started there. It has a very special place for me. And then of course in the more recent times with Raj, I mean and so many great musicians on the scene. The Groove, the Village Underground, where
Yeah.
we had our residency for years, and we're really, I think we upheld the standard of New York City music. It had the grime, it had the grit, it had the sophistication, it had the attitude, it had all the things that and I think a lot of people would stand by that defines New York City, music,
Yeah.
that
Like you come to New York and somebody says, "Hey, where do we go?" You go to Village Underground. These dudes right here.
precisely. And
That thing.
or Cafe
Or
Wa.
Cafe Wa. Yeah.
We played the Blue Note as well, right across the street from the Village Underground. Like that little 2-block radius there. And of course, Bleecker Street as well. The Bitter End is still, doing great music, great, I mean, there's no shortage of talent and great music in the city.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You do a little film composing.
Sir.
Let me know about that. Let us know about that. You've worked on a couple projects.
Yeah, I did it. I haven't done many films. Some years ago, I did a short film called Coolophobia, Year of Clowns, and I got to compose music for that, and that was awesome. Recently, I'm doing music for audiobooks, essentially, for a company called Sound Booth Theater, and for American Greetings, actually, as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently they're doing, I do it through a friend of mine who's an amazing composer, drummer, musician himself. And yeah, apparently American Greetings is doing audio samples, and in some cases of famous people, and music, where I guess you can purchase a greeting for a musical greeting and stuff of that nature. And the Sound Booth Theater are actual audio books that are pretty bananas, man. They're like I jokingly say they're like Quentin Tarantino-esque. Almost, they have a violent element to them and whatnot.
That's interesting. How do you even compose for something like that? How do you create? Do you start with the emotion, or do you start like that's a interesting thing?
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's a challenge for all composers. Definitely, especially in this case, like without the visual. I get a description usually from who's at the head of the actual book, and for example, recently I got a description, and they're usually pretty esoteric. I got a description to incorporate distorted harp, mariachi music, accordion, and heavy metal in one piece. And
what?
Exactly. So, and of course, right, and the emotional element. Is it an action piece? Is it sad? Is it happy? Is it a combination of those things that transition as the narration unfolds? And in that regard, I feel like we're also like actors. We have to find that emotion, the emotions that the writer or the director is trying to convey, and hopefully nail it.
Right. So do you you compose it and then maybe meet with the team or the director afterwards? You guys go through it and then you try to enhance it in a way where it's better or it's going in a different direction or fine tune it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if the director or the head of the project is wants something changed or do a rewrite, of course you go there. Thus far, I've been very lucky that there hasn't been much of that. I think because of the fact that it's audio and there's not a visual component to it.
Mm-hmm.
You can get away with a little more, I think, as opposed to an actual film with all the visual stuff, especially with film, as you well know, that there's timing cues, like at this particular moment in time in the film something changes, you might want to rhythmically get that moment in time, you got a hit there or a change there. I think we have a little more leeway with just the audio version of it.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever create, well, I guess I know that when you listen to films, the scores of films, how do you create music that kind of stands alone? You know what I mean? Like somebody wants to go back and listen to the track because they like the music.
Great point. And the masters, of course, have done just that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely, there's so many to name, but it's two that have been, huge influences on me that made me want to get into the orchestra along with some of the classical composers, with Danny Elfman, John Williams, Jerry Goldsmith, the Hollywood masters. We're exactly right. Where not only and that's such a difficult thing to do, not only does the music enhance the film in such an incredible way that it could stand alone.
Yeah. Yeah. You kind of want it to stand alone because people buy soundtracks. People buy, just because of the music. Absolutely. And it reminds them of the music. So yeah. That's a tough one.
That's master,
Yeah.
You can do that. I mean, it's remarkable. That's definitely a difficult thing to do. Like, I think Star Wars is most famous,
right,
the most famous example of, like, everyone knows all those themes on their own. And I dare say, certainly the franchise, I don't even know if they would have got past the first movie if John Williams' score wasn't what it was.
True. Yeah. Right.
So powerful, man.
It sure was. Yep. It's almost like which was better, the score or the film. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there could be, for the first movie anyway, could be
right.
an argument that without that score, I don't know if that movie does what it does,
Agreed.
Score. And for me also, the first Batman, powerful and the perfect complement to the visual component. And that's also an incredible thing, right? When there's a director and a composer that have that thing where the music is and the visual completely in the
sync.
same,
yeah,
they're in sync in that way that you can't imagine one without the other, in a sense.
Right. And it's hard to get on the same page with the vision that can make that sync happen. And when you do, it's like, damn,
right, it's magic.
That's the killer. Yeah.
I think Bernard Herrmann had that with Alfred Hitchcock, would be a late earlier examples of that. There's a lot of I think Terrence Blanchard with Spike Lee's stuff, another great example.
Yeah.
Earlier, true. Before that, people don't know, Bill Lee, Spike's father, is an amazing composer. He did Do the Right Thing, and that score is crazy.
It is. It really is. It really is. Shout out to Spike, man. Yeah, and 40 Acre Studio, which is right down the block for me.
Awesome. Beautiful, man.
So what are you working on now? What do you have coming up in the future, or how can we connect with you in a way where we can get some of the greatness?
Oh, you're too kind. I'm certainly striving for that. We all are. I'm finishing up a book for the Sound Booth Theater guys called Dungeness Crawler Carl, which I think is their flagship book. And we've been working on it for a while because it's a pretty large book. And there's a bunch of other composers besides myself working on it. Ahmed Mahmoud My boy brought me in. Great composer, guitar player, sound engineer. So yeah, we're working on that. I think we're going to be finished with it at the end of June. And really, I'm just trying to get my composition reel, which I sent you, to as many folks as I can to get more work in this area, because I really am excited about transitioning into the, I love the fact also that we can all collaborate from all these different places,
Yeah, right.
having, as you and I are now, without having to physically be in the same place.
Exactly.
Remarkable time, man.
Yep.
The
It really
technology,
is.
these the orchestral libraries that we have at our disposal, man, I mean, they sound so legit and so they emulate a real orchestra so well. It's hard to hear the difference at this point between an actual orchestra and those sound libraries, man. It's an incredible time to be a composer.
Really is.
Because before, I mean, who had access to an
You,
orchestra? I
right.
mean,
Exactly. It's, yeah, we've gone to a whole new level now,
sir.
and we have to embrace it and use it. That's what
Yeah.
it's here for.
Oh, it's an incredible time to be creative, man.
Right. Is age ever a thought for you, in terms of what you do in the business?
Yeah, I know it's a sensitive issue for some folks, but yeah, for me, not so much. Like I was just saying to you before we started recording, for me, it's like a badge of honor. I'm grateful to still be alive and still doing this.
Right. Yeah.
So in that regard, yeah. But I don't know how other people perceive it, but
I'm
for
going to
me,
say it's a little bit different too, as an actor, because I'm an actor. I'm in front of the camera. So youth is always, they're always throwing the thing of youth on you. I don't know if that's something that I put on myself
mm,
now. I don't think it's like that so much for one, men, and two, now, the way things are casted, there are always roles for older men.
mm,
Um, it's more so for women. But I think just for myself, like the image that I have for myself, maybe that's
right,
the pressure that I put on myself in the business. Because I always think, oh, yeah, maybe I'll still have a chance of being on that soap opera.
right.
I'm not going to be on the soap opera as a leading guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not 25. But I think in my mind, you want to stay as youthful as possible.
Didn't Christopher Walken start acting at like in his 40s or something?
Yeah. Right. Morgan Freeman, same thing. Big break when he got older,
Okay,
you
yeah,
know. And I think, yeah, we do get to a point where, we have to come to grips with that thing and be I know I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to be that leading young man anymore. Maybe I can be a leading older man.
right.
So maybe I should embrace the gray hairs that I have and just allow that to take place.
You're
Right.
versatile. You can, you know what I mean? You can fluctuate between the
Right.
two if you look at it from that perspective.
That's true. Yeah.
And the other thing from my perspective too is I feel like my age also sends a signal that I've been around the block. I'm not going to be easily taken advantage of, or
Right.
that I
Right.
know how the business is. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes they
Seasoned.
experience. I have a
Right.
friend, I have a friend, Dean James, is an amazing drummer, and he used to make me laugh. I like we when we would play together, he would crack me up because he would say the funniest stuff to everyone, including me, while we were playing. And when I would play, sometimes he would turn to me and go, "So mature."
Yeah, that's funny.
And I'd be in tears to the point where sometimes I couldn't play. He'd
That's
crack.
hilarious. So this past weekend, that reminds me too. This past weekend, there was a jazz band playing across the street from my place. So I called up a buddy of mine who's a percussionist, he's a jazz percussionist, and it was interesting to see his reaction. He's a younger guy versus the people who were playing because they were seasoned professionals.
Mhm.
So there was a guy who was, and I can't remember his name. He was the drummer for Branford Marcellus. He was in Mo Better Blues. He showed
Oh,
up.
that's not I can't. That's not Jeff Tain Watts, is it?
Could be, could be. I don't even know.
So, but if you're playing with Branford, you're a monster.
Right.
Yeah,
So it was just interesting to see the dynamics he had with the people who were actually playing because you could tell they were seasoned professionals, the way they were handling the instruments, the way they were, just what they were doing in the music,
right,
versus what he would do when I see him play. And
right.
it's nothing to take away from him, but there's a difference when you're seasoned,
I agree.
and the comfortability.
I agree with that. I think too, definitely for myself, when I was younger, um, I was more apt to like not necessarily play in the cut and be supportive of the other musicians, probably too concerned, too narcissistic in that regard
Right.
about my own thing.
Explain that a little bit for the people who don't know what that means, because I get what you mean.
It means basically if you're playing in an ensemble
Mhm.
and ultimately you want to play something that just adds to the sonic environment in a positive way and be supportive of whatever's going on around you, you know, and not necessarily being so concerned about your thing standing out and more concerned about the overall sound of the music and supporting all the other musicians, whether it's, the singer, whether it's someone taking a solo, just, you have to weave in and out and it takes a certain level of maturity, I think, to begin to understand that because if you don't have that experience as an ensemble player, like you and I talked about last time,
Mhm.
if you're in your room practicing and all that, and that's fine. And once you get other human beings involved, and especially in jazz, where at every moment things can change and turn and all that, and your reaction to that is paramount. So
Mm.
you know and that just takes it takes time to acquire that. I feel like certainly as I've grown older and being on the scene and playing with so many great players, that was a great lesson for me, like, oh wait, the keyboard player is doing this and all this other stuff. Sometimes the best choice is to not play at all,
Mm.
for like,
For-
as it's especially like when, like, say either a saxophone player or someone in the ensemble is taking a solo. I'll dip for the first several choruses. I won't play a note,
right.
just to open up that lane, and then find and pick a spot to gradually come in to support that and add dynamics and a flow to the music that if I was just in there right out the gate banging away, might not have given. And you don't want to force the soloist into a certain area. You want to give them and follow them, let them take the lead.
That's the key. I think that's the key, because if somebody's taking a solo, you want to give them the liberty to go where they want to go, and then you respond in a way where they're still taking the lead, and then you listen for the time to dip out, and then they close it out, and the next person rolls in.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
and
not
that's
that's not an easy thing to do.
no, it's not.
It's
It's not.
definitely
So you said you played, a lot of places. Where, like, what are some of your favorite places, or do you have a favorite place you played? I
wow.
think we kind of mentioned Bitter End last time, but
Bitter Ends where I really cut my teeth in New York.
mm,
I was 19 when I first started playing there, and that has a special place in my heart, especially because my band was an instrumental band, and they weren't. There may have been one or two other bands besides my band that were doing that, but that place is known for music that's surrounded, that's basically vocal music. So it holds a special place in my heart, plus all the wonderful people I've met and heard there. But I spent the majority of my time later playing at the Groove, which also has a special place in my heart because I mean we grinded there. We did 4.5 hours a night, and playing God every conceivable genre of imaginable, and we definitely it was like a triathlon musically. Like you lost weight at the end. I mean, me and Raj would go out to it, and some of the other guys too would go out to a diner afterwards and just eat like a Thanksgiving meal after, because we just left it all on the stage. And then the Village Underground is where I played as well for a long time, and great, great place to play, great group of people. And yeah, I was fortunate enough to get consistent work at that. So that's the hardest part of our thing. It's you can get sparse gigs here and there, but
mhm.
getting that 4 or 5 nights a week worth of work, that's challenging. So, I was very,
Was
I'm
it
very,
was it mostly your band, or did you do um, connections with other bands? Were you
yeah,
playing with other bands?
I played with other bands, particularly with Raj,
Mhm.
and Raj had a very particular niche. He did mashups basically. We play a part of one song, and he would maybe sing a completely different song over that, and vice. I mean, we'd go all these different places. It was actually the closest thing that I've done in like a pop commercial setting that was akin to jazz.
Mm.
There was a lot of improv. Raj led all of us soloists, Stretch, and he was, very supportive in that regard. Whereas the other bands I played with, we played the song pretty much in lockstep with the original. So
Something like that. How important is knowledge of music and music history for you for something like that?
it's important. And in my case, I have to confess that when I first started playing with these guys, they were playing a lot of stuff that I wasn't familiar with. That's that was popular, including older stuff, whatever. A lot of the older R&B stuff that I got to play, some hip hop stuff that I wasn't familiar with. But because of my ears and my overall musicality and the support of the members of the band, I've started to find my lane. And I also enjoyed kind of coming up with my own thing over certain, just kind of, and Raj's concept was really conducive to that because, it really allowed me to, I'm improvising. Even if I'm not taking a solo, even within the rhythm section, I can play, a certain thing that might not be on the recording that gave it a flavor and it became our thing, we were known for that.
I like that. That gives it that sort of extra uniqueness. That's yeah,
Yeah.
that becomes your sound, no matter what the uniqueness is. It's something different.
Yeah, in that regard, like it's like and I have this the same approach as a teacher. In some ways, naivety and ignorance can be an asset. It can't, like because you're coming at it from a different angle. you know you can obviously listen to a piece of music and discern what's going on and copy that, and that's cool. Knowledge of that stuff. I'm not, by no means am I saying to neglect all the great music that is out there, especially if you have to play it. But I mean, so many times we would play songs even as we progressed. that someone would just play something, you know, chord progression that happened to be from, you know, whoever or whatever it was from. And even if you weren't familiar with the original, you can hear what, you know, the chords and the melody and whatever was going and the rhythm, and find your lane and do something with it.
Hmm. Okay.
That was
Do you
fun.
feel like where we are now, social media has taken, changed music drastically, or what kind of effects has social media had on music?
Yeah, I think do you mean the internet in general, like YouTube and stuff?
Yeah, the internet in general. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's been a tremendous asset
Hmm.
from because now, I mean, you can learn and or listen to anything your heart desires, and get exposed to new things that you may not have known, you know, like before, right? When we were coming up, it was the radio.
Right.
And if you know, if you just listen to the radio, you got a certain thing, which is cool. And most of the time, like it took a friend or someone, right, to turn you on to, hey, listen to this, you know,
Right.
and so forth. But now you can just literally stumble upon things through a podcast or through your feed. You know, the algorithm just happens to, you know, feed you a certain. I'm discovering all these incredible players on the internet that you know, I've never would have been able to listen to if not for that. So yeah, I think it's just broadening everything.
What do you think about in terms of business too? I mean, yeah,
Yeah, it's
business
definitely
for where you are as a teacher and as an artist. How has
exactly
that? Yeah, how has that helped you? Or
expanding all the horizons.
mhm.
Now you don't need a record deal to get your work heard and out there, which in back in the day you needed a record deal for that to happen pretty much. Teaching wise, like you and I are doing, we can be in completely different places and still, you know, interact. I can still teach people online. I prefer in person, but you can still make it happen on, especially with more advanced players, definitely do it online. And it's just remarkable. Yeah, I mean, it's just blown the doors wide open on so many levels. It's positive.
All right, so all right, we're gonna play a little game now and just say the first thing comes to your mind. It's called Fire on the Mic. I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions. You just say the first thing that comes to your mind. All right. If you were an instrument, what would you be?
Guitar.
If you were a band, what would you be?
The Miles Davis band with Herbie, Wayne, Ron, Tony Williams.
Ooh, wow. That's a lot. All right. That's a good one. If you were a CD or EP, what would you be?
Wow. Nothing like the sun, Sting.
Oh my gosh. All right. That's what I wanted to know. Why Sting? Why that one?
Now, I was 15 when I heard that record for the first time, and so many things stand out to me. One, the impact it had on me as a young person. Two, it's the it was really my introduction to jazz, because what Branford and Kenny Kirkland were doing, and the overall concept of the how the everyone approached those songs was just blew my mind. I had never heard anything like that, and it was still pop.
Yeah.
It wasn't like so complex, or because I was listening to some pretty complex instrumental music.
Hmm.
Heard pop, you know, like these particular like pop structured songs with like this level of improv and just a vibe to it. And Little Wing is on that record, which one of the first songs my dad taught me on guitar. So it's a special record for me.
That's interesting. That goes back. See, this is what I wanted to know. Like, how do you take as an artist, you listen to music and you take that music. This is music history. And then you take it and you make it your own. What do you take? What do you pull from each thing, and then bring it back and say, this is what I do.
Yeah,
That's the hard part.
some people, yeah, hybrid, like, they call it fusion, at least in the instrumental world. I know that was, you know, a thing for a while with Weather Report and Chick Electric Band and stuff, which is Mahavishnu, with John McLaughlin, all that stuff, which was awesome. But yes, I love hybrids. I love the idea of incorporating, you know, different styles, and then whatever your voice is, your personal unique quality, hopefully will resonate through that. And jazz in general has so much of that, because you know, Brazilian bossa nova and
Yeah.
other incredible. And then within the umbrella of jazz, you have the bebop stuff, you have big band stuff, you have, and Miles was usually at the, you know, the head of all that. It just always to the next level. Yeah, it's a music's incredible.
It really is. Now I want to end on this because at the end of our last conversation, you had another incident at a gig you were playing, and somebody else came in. You said there were a couple of celebrities that rolled up into your gig, and one of them needed to play, and I wanted to share that with everybody else. So what happened?
So as it turned out, the great Purple One himself came he came to about 5 or 6 of our gigs at the Village Underground, and he went to see some other bands too. He saw a gentleman named Leonard, who has a great band that played the groove a lot, and he went to see them as well. But yeah, he just I think his first night he came to see us, Raj's band, and yeah, it was bananas. He rolled in with Spike Lee, Dr. Cornel West, Sinbad, and Tavis Smiley. That's who I
That's
forgot.
crazy. What a combination. What a combination. That's hilarious. I can't even imagine those guys hanging out. I mean, I can and I can't.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I
And
mean?
some of the members of his band too were with him, and they were just so cool. Oh, and Larry Graham,
And
Larry.
Larry Graham. Wow.
Yeah, because yeah, Larry. Actually, there is a YouTube video up with us playing one of Larry's tunes. I forgot the name of it. I know it's got like it's about hair. Um, it's a dope song, but yeah, it was and although I don't think there's any footage of it, Prince sat in with us and he used my gear, which was like it was just nuts.
That's crazy. That was a 360 moment. I
Right.
mean, did you even think about that at the time?
You know what? As I was, you know, plugging him in and helping him dial in the sound on my gear, I did think about that. I was like, wow, this has been, because you know, 5 years prior, I had that experience when Toby Lightman's band opened for him in Portland, and that was just a surreal. So it was, yeah, it was crazy. Like, wow, 5 years later, here he is, and it's just like I didn't even know what to say. I just I didn't
That's crazy.
anything. I just plugged him in, got his sound up. So that what an honor to, you know, to see you. And off I went, and he did his thing.
How do you keep your humility? Because even just in speaking with you, I feel the graciousness, I feel the humility, I feel that. How do you stay grounded in a world where we have to be on show, where we have to be on stage, where we have to be on? How do you
Yeah.
keep that groundedness?
I think as a performer, you know, of course, you have to have a certain level of confidence and all that. So, you know, as you as an actor, I'll go into character, so to speak, you know,
Hmm.
and dialing in and focusing on whatever I'm playing and playing that part. If I'm playing something soft and subtle, I'm gonna embody that. If I'm playing something aggressive, I'm gonna, you know, or whatever it is. So that, and music, of course, keeps you humble, because there's just so, you know, the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know and how much there is to learn. Certainly being surrounded by all the great musicians I've been honored and fortunate to play with through the years. And then ultimately, for me personally, I lived my dad's dream. Like, he wanted to be a musician. He's the reason why I fell in love with music and began playing guitar at a young age. So like I'm blessed in that regard. So all of those things, you know, and then of course, like when you meet someone like Prince, and when I tell you that he was so humble and so kind, and so, even for the little bit of time I spent around him, that will humble you in a heartbeat. Like, that will, you know, I don't care who you are. It's so humbling. He's so humble that he humbles everybody else around him.
Wow.
That was so powerful.
Well, I have to say, I wish he would talk to a lot of actor friends that I have, because there's no
Yeah,
humility amongst actors.
and
It's the ones that I know anyway.
yeah, I understand that, but
And that's that.
and I wonder for both of our fields, and that's a great point, particularly in your field. I wonder if that's necessary to make it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
As a younger person, and in fact, the great Gordon Gaines, who Kyle talked about with you some time ago, and was literally like the baddest New York City guitar player, just bananas, man. But he said to me, I was, I guess, 19 or 20, and I was definitely cocky. College also fostered that. There was like a competitive
Hmm.
thing,
Yep.
constant critique and all that. So, and probably being young too. And Gordon said to me, he said it was better to be a good person than a great guitar player. And he was both. He was both a great guitar player and a great person. So that resonated with me.
That's true. And that just resonates through life. That's life. It's just better to be a good person,
I agree.
period. You know?
I think it's easier to be humble once you achieve a certain level of success.
Hmm.
As you're again, both of our industries, right? You go on auditions and you're literally competing for the approval of whoever you're auditioning for to get a gig.
Right.
And so that's going to breed a certain thing, a certain level of, in some cases, arrogance or whatever. But sometimes I wonder if that's necessary to accomplish certain things.
Right. I would have to agree. And I'd have to wonder the same thing. I mean, I know that certain things have offered me opportunity because I was humble, because I was quiet, or because I was something else, different. But arrogance, I don't think I've ever gone in with. Confidence, of course, but yeah, arrogance, no.
That's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
that fine line between confidence and arrogance.
Right.
Sometimes one could be misconstrued for the other, Um, that's a tricky, but that's something that it's an
Individual thing. Yeah, for sure. Any last words? What would you say to people who are starting out, in the music business, and in terms of where their life could go, the trajectory of their life, any of that?
Man, it seems so arbitrary, and it seems like anything could happen at any time. So in that regard, it is a roll of the dice, but definitely, follow your heart, do what sounds and feels right for you. And if it resonates with other people, I think you got to do it for you. Like I've always told people, like my thing is very selfish. I'll be the first to admit. I'm more, the first and foremost thing that I'm trying to accomplish is whatever music I'm making is to satisfy me. And then if other people dig it, that would be awesome. I mean, because that's necessary to, make a living doing it, and you need, the approval of other people to like your work. But I think, you got to satisfy yourself first. Don't try to placate other people. Don't try to appease other people. And if it's meant to be, it'll happen.
And there you have it. Great words from a great man. Eddy Zak, thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. Please come back anytime. As I said, hopefully we'll get some of you guys on here and we can talk some music and talk some just life stuff and where we are. So I appreciate you. Eddy Zak, we'll have the information down below where you can reach out to him. This is OneMicNite, OneMicNite. Make sure you hop on the live chat every Tuesday at 8 p.m. But thank you guys all for joining me. Inbox me at Marcos Luis if you have anything to say, MarcosLuis. Until then, keep your eye on music. Eddy Zak, we'll see you later.